So yeah, this is C Beats, and I'm about to show you how I make my pop punk, pop rock, punk rock type beats like MGK, Blink-182, whoever you want to be. So let's get into it. I'm not gonna lie, I don't really like doing these types of YouTube, talking to the camera type things, but hey, the people want it. It's crazy. Everyone think you gotta be like crazy guitar or something to make this kind of stuff, and it's just not true. Like, you'll see when I make this beat, everything I do is pretty simple. Like, I swear a beginner guitarist could do most of this stuff. For this one, I'm pretty much just using my Epiphone G400. I'm going direct through my Scarlett interface. And then for tones, I'm just using STL Tone Hub with the John Feldmann pack, and also a little bit of guitar rig too when I use like cleaner tones. Doesn't really matter though. If you want to go through your amp, you got pedals and stuff like that, then it'll work just as long as you can get it into your DAW. So this beat's pretty straightforward. Right here I just start out with a basic 4-chord power chord progression. I'm pretty much just using the root and fifth so I can leave room for other sounds later on. For all the guitars that I record, I make sure I run them through a compressor. And then also for all my rhythms and like power chords and stuff, I always double track it so I can give it a more stereo feel. And also leave space for stuff like vocals and even just other guitars throughout the beat. So now that I got down the power chord progression, I'll just add in like a basic octave lead kind of thing. It pretty much just gives it a more melodic element, but doesn't really cut into the high end like a solo lead kind of would. I also put some sample delay on the octaves, which is kind of like double tracking, but I didn't really record it twice. It spreads it out a little bit and lets it stand out from the power chords just so you can hear it a little better. After I got the octaves down, then I put in a bass. I'm using a MIDI bass. I'm just using like ample bass, and then I'm running it through my amp sim. Obviously, if you got a real bass, it'll be a little bit of a better sound. I just didn't have one right now. But even if you use a MIDI bass like this, once you have the guitars and the drums over it, it's kind of even hard to distinguish one from the other. So then after I got the bass down, I put in the drums. I'm using MIDI drums. I'm using the Modern and Massive Bank from Get Good Drums. Everyone always asks me about that, I swear to God. I pretty much always just start with the kick and the snare, and then I add in the cymbals, crashes, hi-hats, all that kind of stuff. It's a little bit of a learning curve when you're doing MIDI drums like this, trying to make them sound realistic, but if you have kind of a basic understanding of how drummers work and also just kind of different groups, you'll get the hang of it after a while. And I always throw on a compressor EQ and a little bit of saturation too, to give the drums a good tone. And then I always think it's important to vary up your velocities too, just so it makes it sound more realistic like an actual drummer. then I also added in this high lead melody just to make the hook a little more catchy. So then at this point, I pretty much just have the whole hook section laid out already, and now I can move into other parts like the verses and stuff. So for the verse, I started with the power chords again, and I kind of just did a little more choppy rhythm guitar. And then I always switch up the drums and stuff between different sections just so it's always kind of varying up and changing throughout the beat. Then as the verse goes on, I'm adding in another octave lead. This one's obviously different from the hook, but again, it gives it a little more of a melodic element. Then I'm moving into the pre-hook section where the drums kind of switch up and go double time. I also change up the progression a little bit from that 4-chord progression, and I change up the octave too, just as it moves into the verse. And then at this point too, I started working on the intro part that I filter it and stuff later on and add different effects. I always kind of just work on those little sections as I'm working on the beat itself. So it keeps kind of changing throughout the whole time I'm making this. But basically I just wanted kind of like a high pass filter, and then I add in like some drums, reverse, a snare and stuff as it moves into that intro section where it kind of drops. Then at this point, I just have all the major sections done. I start working on the bridge. I changed up the progression a little bit, added in some octaves, some drums, and the bass. And then I kind of started working on this like second section of the bridge where I switch up to a clean tone, add the bass, and kind of take out the drums and stuff like that. And then I'm always adding in fills and stuff between these sections just so the transitions sound really nice. And then kind of lastly, this is kind of like a common thing they do in pop punk, but on that last hook, I take out the drums and the bass at kind of that first half of the hook. I add kind of a high pass filter throughout, and then I throw in a drum fill and kind of transition it back to the main hook as it drops. I swear this in like so many pop punk songs and stuff like that, so it's a nice little touch. And then the very last thing is I throw on effects and stuff. Obviously, it's still, we still doing kind of a little bit of hip hop production. I'm adding in sweeps and drops. I like kind of having those things at the transition. They kind of help build up tension. Obviously, when you're making pop punk and rock, it's a little less important than when you're working with hip hop. Now, obviously, off camera, I kind of went through and added a little touches here and there. Here's the final result after I kind of messed with the leveling. So yeah, that's how I make my pop punk stuff. Let's go.